When Martin Luther King talked about accepting suffering for the sake of the cause to achieve the goal, in that principle, Martin Luther King is really embodying now the total philosophy of nonviolence, in the sense that the distinction between suffering in order to achieve a goal is different from suffering as submission to oppression. Both represents suffering. One suffering is suffering that's passive, and suffering that comes about because people do not respond. Suffering under oppression because people do not have hope for change. Suffering and accepting the suffering, and even sometimes blaming the victim. But when Martin Luther King talks about suffering here, it means suffering because you take a stand for right. Suffering because you take actions to change the forces of evil. Suffering because you believe that suffering becomes a way of redemption. In fact, not only redeeming oneself, but redeeming the other person, in the sense that you want to bring about change by modeling a certain kind of behavior and refusing to participate in the same kind of behavior as your opponent. You're rejecting the forces of violence by saying, no, I will not participate in violence. It means that I will not perpetrate violence, I will not retaliate with violence, nor will I allow violence to stop my force of truth in my actions for justice. So therefore, Martin Luther King saying the nonviolent activist does not respect the force of violence, even if it means taking on the suffering, because that suffering may be necessary to achieve the goal. Now, in terms of some people being able to accept this, the suffering sometimes can be translated into making sacrifices for something that you think is worthwhile. It may mean burning the midnight oil in order to make a better grade in your class as a student. It could be an athlete. Like, for example, people who swim. You've heard of the concept of getting a second wind. It means that a person has exhausted their body and has exerted all the energy they could. They've gone to the nth degree. And even when they go to the nth degree, that's the moment that they get a resurgence of the energy and power to go further. So the suffering may be necessary in order to get the second wind.